Wow, hello and greetings from wherever you are in the part of the world. This is iGaming Africa, and today's webinar we're going to be talking about examining the status of online betting regulation in South Africa. So I'm super excited, and with me I have a group of panelists who are very expert, and they're going to tell us who they are. And before that, I would just like to request you, our audience. Feel free to engage with this webinar, ask your questions, follow the panelists, share, tell a friend to tell a friend. So it's gonna be engaging and would like go straight to the point. And I will start with Annalisa. I ask you to introduce yourself, tell us who you are and what you do. Annalisa, over to you.
Hi, thank you so much, Lynn. My name is Annalisa Samuels, and I work for Sino Games. I'm the sales manager for Africa. Prior to this, I've been very involved in iGaming in South Africa, having been in it for the past like 9 years. At the forefront of it with live games and then progressing into slots, and very involved in certification and approval of B2B providers in the country with all regulators.
Wow,
Thank
we're
you.
happy to have you. And Sheree, over to you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Sheree Hassan. I am legal counsel for Karan Interactive. We're a gaming and platform provider. So I'll be speaking from a predominantly a B2B perspective and a legal
Mhm.
perspective as well. Thanks.
All right, you look like a legal person. You're surely welcome. Zuko, over to you.
Oh, thanks, Len. Good day or good afternoon to everyone or to the world. My name is Zogo Pandle. I am with the Eastern Cape Gambling Board, representing the regulatory space. I've been within the industry for over 16 years. I also serve in the SABS Technical Working Committee that set the standard for South Africa. I am the manager for audit and compliance, responsible for inspections, law enforcement, your responsible gambling, your audit and compliance, as well as the approvals of platforms, everything gaming technology. So this is me. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Wow, we're happy to hear from you. That's a wealth of experience. And before we even get started, we have special people that we love to recognize. Those are our sponsors. And I want to hand this over to iGaming Africa to tell us more about our sponsors, and then we will be right back. Please share and tell a friend and tell a friend. Yeah, over to you, iGaming Africa. there you go. I just want to mention them briefly. We have Soft Swift, we have Raven Track, we have DigiChain, Every Matrix, 1xBit, and then we have Kiron Interactive. Those were our sponsors. They have made this webinar happen. And without even forgetting the people who have just organized this, can we just acknowledge the team powering this webinar? And I am talking about iGaming Consult Africa. And then I'm going to tell you about some good news that is happening next year, 2026. We have our iGaming Africa Summit that will be happening from May 4 to May 6. So get your free ticket right now. But before that, please, iGaming Africa, tell us more about what you do and show us what you have. iGaming team, over to you. Thank you so much once again, iGaming Africa team and iGaming Africa Consult. And let's diving into the topic of the day. I'm very excited and just go right into our panel discussion. Let me just recap what we're talking about today. We're talking about examining the status of online betting regulation in South Africa. And I'm going to start with you, Zuko, since you're in the regulatory side of things. And Anna, I'm also going to bring you on this. So, Zuko, how would you describe the current state, and you can also touch on the future and the past, of the online betting market in South Africa, and which type of online betting products, sports betting, virtual games, casino styles games are the most popular among the players?
Yeah. No, thanks, Len. That's a great question, I think, to kickstart or to kick off our conversation today. But before we do that, I think in order for us to be able to talk to this discussion and this conversation, particularly this question, we must then look back where betting in South Africa is coming from, aligning it into the South Africa that we know from 1994. But we cannot then neglect the history going beyond that, because if I were to tell you, online betting, or betting particularly, has always been lawful in South Africa, dating back to 1600 and so many years. And that is the only actually legal online form of gambling in South Africa. Anything else, your online interactive gambling, is illegal in South Africa. But now coming back to your question as to what is the current state. Having said that part of the history, and I think pre-2010, around your 2005, we've seen online betting. It was there, but predominantly we had the retail space dominating. But I think in the main, what twisted the coin was then the COVID-19, the unfortunate COVID-19, where it forced everyone to be locked inside their houses. And then, but there had to be other means for us to be able to survive and transact. And I think that's when then the digital adoption came through, not only for betting, your shopping, your banking, and so on. And I think as part of the economy sectors, betting as well benefited from that. So currently what we are seeing is a booming industry on the online betting, particularly with the economic climate. Now people trying to cut costs in terms of traveling, getting into from point A to point B, and other means that they're talking about. But in the main, I can tell you that online betting is booming. But for us as a regulators, we're always very much careful and worried about the protection of the public. That is now, whatever that we do as the industry is thriving, it must then be within the responsible parameters. So basically, I think the gurus to talk about the products would be your analysts
Yeah.
and Shuray. Yeah, but I think in the main,
Mm-hmm.
what I can tell you, around about 56% of the whole online betting is still dominated by sports betting, particularly. Yes, there are other factors or products that are available in the market. Thank you, Lynn, for the question.
Yeah, yeah, and you answered it quite well. You took us back to the past and where we are in the future. And you threw the ball to Annalisa, and I want to get back to her. Do you want to add something to this question? What is your take?
Sure. Sure. Thanks, Lynn, and thanks, Zuko. Look, I was there when COVID struck, and I was in the space already. I was working with Bet Games, and obviously they were online, um, and they were offering their product online. So we had several clients that were already busy with the live games and virtual games, etc. Where COVID took us to was a place where we needed to create contingencies in the online space so that players could be entertained during that period. And it opened up the regulators' minds and to the possibility of allowing it over multiple provinces. So that is what happened there. And we found a lot of operators coming in. It was an influx and very exciting for us at the time. However, since then, we've managed to push through other products like slots and, crash games have come in to being. And crash games are the biggest thing since sliced bread in terms of gaming because everybody wants a piece of it. And everybody's looking for the next new thrill and the new product that's going to come out to change the market and change the way people actually play. There's talk about skill based, but it didn't like really get that as much traction as crash games. But in terms of that, if you look at slots itself and the progression of individual, well, I'll say if you look at the individual types of games, like your virtuals and your slots and your crash games, there's a progression in terms of the product itself and the games itself, and the direction that suppliers are taking to create more content that is relative to the different markets. We've seen over the period of time quite a bit of localized content coming through. I mean, initially localization was just a term, and
Mm-hmm.
now we see it being more relative and more important in terms of the space that we're in to create niche markets and to keep our players happy. We're getting a more mature market. We're getting people who know
Yeah.
what they want, and now we need to try and provide a material and supply product that will satisfy them. And this is where we are at in terms of product in South Africa currently. And in terms of the future, like I said to you, the sky's the limit because people want more. The more you give them, the
Mm-hmm.
more they want, the more they want to see things. Even in, for example, I'm in slots, but even in slots itself, if you break it down, they want to see more activity, more bonusing, more features within the play itself to keep them entertained. And this is where we're going with that. So that is basically in terms of, but crash games definitely are the most popular, followed by slots. Live games have lost a lot of traction since the introduction of slots and crash games.
Yeah,
Okay.
that is very thought provoking, and maybe I just want to go back to the licensing part of it, and this takes me to the next question, and I'm addressing to you, Shure. What role do unlicensed and offshore operators play in shaping the local market, and how significant is their impact on local operators, and what strategies are regulators using to effectively limit their influence? And all of you can chime in on this as well, but Shurir, we want to hear from you first.
Thanks, Lynn. I think that's a great question and something that's really important to discuss. I think, look, if you look at unlicensed offshore operators, they definitely play a dual role in iGaming in Africa specifically. We look at it and we see that they're bringing forward new products with very competitive um, marketing, very aggressive marketing, very attractive odds for the player as well. So they're definitely being very innovative and aggressive with their marketing style and what they have to offer. But on the flip side, you look at it, and it's also very negative for the consumer protection. So you got one aspect going for the player and what they're looking for, and another aspect in a very negative light for them, right? So it does undermine the legal frameworks that are being put in place in order to mitigate these problems. And in doing so, it creates a very distorted competitive environment for everyone. Um, but there are things that are being done in order to solve these problems. We look at the regulators responding with various strategies. by blocking various payments, negotiating and doing cross-border discussions in order to mitigate this. So there is a lot of things going forward. We look at policies being put in place, from AML policies to FICA to PAPIA. So there are definitely things being done in the background. And in order to do that, the trajectory is clear of what we need to do is in order to push more cross-border negotiations and discussion, bring awareness out to everyone, and then to try to limit unlicensed offshore by providing awareness not only to private sector, but also to the players so that they understand what are the consequences of engaging with them.
Yes,
Okay.
I totally relate to that, especially when it comes to awareness,
Mm.
right? And Zuko, you're also in this sector of the regulation side of things, and I know you have some gems to drop. Please drop them right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, this is a very interesting part, Lynn, right? Now, Shrey just close off by awareness. And what we've been doing as part of the public protection and public education has been conducting those sessions. But I think there's an element or part or pocket of the society that we may not have been focusing on. Now, what do I mean about this? The offshore companies, what they do or how their modus operandi, they come through, part of a sponsorship, to our sporting activities in the country. As Africa, we need investment. As Africa, we need those social investment. Now, when they do that, they build up the base from the sporting fans. Now, the public does not understand or know if this one and so on and the other one is coming from offshore or is licensed. So I think that's another element. As we create awareness, we've got to join hands, all of us, including government, including sport councils, your PSLs of this world, everyone that is involved in the sporting activity and other things in the society. That awareness that is needed, because what they do, as opposed to your likes of your analysts and your Kiron guys that come through, where you must vet them, you must probe them, they must pay your deposit fees for investigation and so on. These guys already, they've tested the market through the back door. Now, this would have been a part of discussion, I think last year, I believe even this year, earlier this year, in the ICE and other conferences, which iGaming Africa has been part of as well, to say, what is the gray market? What are these issues? How do we deal with that? So as we are protecting the public, we've got to make sure that we are educating the public. So for me, that awareness has got to extend not only the players, that are the users of the product, but also our government as well. Thanks, Lynn.
Yes, yes,
Um,
multi-stakeholder approach. Yes, Annalisa, please draw in your gems.
sorry, just to
Yeah,
say,
please.
look, there's a great movement internationally to try and curb any, illegal participation and unlicensed players within the market. So there's a big shift towards regulated markets, and Africa forms part of that because countries that are regulated now considered markets like how you consider Malta and MJ and all these other types of Romania and all these other types of regulated markets coming up. What
Yeah.
we need to understand is that as B2B suppliers playing in that regulated market space, we are realizing that there is a need for us to block off unlicensed operations where we actually track where the feeds are going. And we
Yeah.
make sure that if they are feeding off the wrong license to a regulated market, that that feed is not, we don't allow our games to be actually played in that jurisdiction. So that feed is blocked. And geo blocking is not just working, where regulators are trying to block off illegal sites. You find that businesses, B2B businesses providing product in their own capacity will block off, geo block those particular jurisdictions where those activities are not permitted. So there's great movement to try and progress into the regulated space. Obviously, some will be left behind and will transition
Yeah.
over a period of time. But that is the mindset internationally and for South Africa as well, because you fall under that regulated market space. And soon you'll find that even certain licenses that were providing feed to these areas will not be allowed anymore within our B2B space. And that will also curb it. So even providers are doing their bit. Providers playing in the regulated space are doing their bit to curb all of this and provide these games in to these illegal operators or offshore
Yeah,
operators.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for adding that. I found that really, really insightful. But I really want to shift gears to laws actually. And I'm gonna come to you, Sheree. Do South Africans' culture current gambling laws adequately cover online betting, or are there significant gaps that need urgent attention? And anyone can chime in as well. But Sheree, tell us your thoughts on that.
Thanks. Yeah, another great question. And when we look at the laws regulating gambling, we know that these laws were drafted years ago before the rapid rise of technology. And technology is improving and innovating every day. So it's continuously living and growing. When we look at the National Gambling Act, we can see when it looks at interactive gambling, it is discussed, but in a very limited manner. And what that poses is gaps in the foundation and framework. And some of the specific gaps we can look at is just fragmentation between provincial and national, right? And the misalignment of being harmonized. Um, it's one of the big issues that we need to solve as a country, legally pertaining to this industry. Another gap that you could see, is just emerging different formats of gambling. So you look at crypto-based betting or esports and the need to regulate that and look forward to what's coming up into the future. Where is the industry growing, and see how to regulate and draft these laws and enforce these laws actually as well. So it's not just about putting words on paper, but how is it going to be rolled out? How is it going to be implemented and regulated as well, right? So I think in summary, when we're looking at this year, I think we do have very good laws, but there's definitely a need to improve. You need to modernize it, and especially in order to harmonize it from a provincial and national level. And then it goes back in order to, once that has been done, how do we provide this education to society from top down, from government to the player, so that everyone's aligned and on the same page with it.
Definitely, Zuko. I'm listening to this, and I'm looking at you since you're in the low part of things. Do you
Yeah.
think law is catching up with technology? Do you think there's a lag behind, and what should be done? And Annalisa, you can also chime in on this. But Zuko, tell us what's your thoughts from the law perspective.
Yeah, look, and I think I agree and align to what Shure has alluded to earlier on. And I think it's not a South African issue. I think it's a global issue, or the
It is.
continental issue. Recently, would have had Kenya, for example, now doing away with the old act. I think the law that you guys utilized up until, from 1966 or so. Yeah, I think what we've got a very sound regulatory framework in South Africa, I must say, and I think the law drafters, the lawmakers, when they developed that, and I think that actually comes from the Vienna Commission from, I think, 1995, if I'm not mistaken, that has studied, across the globe, all the regulators that were available, and then what were their mistakes, and then developed a model that South Africa would suit South Africa. But obviously, and I think now perhaps it is the time now that we have what I term as gambling regulatory framework reimagined
Yeah.
through the lens of information systems security, and player protection. Now, that regulatory framework reimagined, it means that we know the technologies that we know now, we didn't know back then, but the technologies that are to come in the next 5, 10, or 20 years, we will not know. However, if we have a regulatory framework that is reimagined, that appreciates and recognizes the evolution of technology, but obviously that evolution has got to be within the parameters that is primarily ethical
Yeah.
and responsible and people-centric. So as it stands, the regulatory framework that we have regulate or licenses the forms of license, like your bookmaker or your totalizator, that are within the, what do you call it, the online betting, or within the betting segment. But obviously now the forms or modes of offering have evolved immensely. So those are the things that now this reimagined gambling regulatory framework must then attach to. And I can tell you, a conversation is already ongoing amongst ourselves as PLAs, that is provincial licensing authorities, as
Yeah.
well as the National Gambling Board, around that part.
All
And I
right.
think, lastly, from my side, it would be that what I term as, again, that collaborated efforts, including the law drafters, because, and I think that has been the case in the past, that we have laws that have taken years before they are passed. And then by the time that they are passed, they already lost the taste, or what do you call it, the importance.
Yeah.
in the space.
So,
Yeah,
so
thank you.
yeah,
Yeah,
put a
if
point
I
to
could,
that. And yeah, please chime in. I was actually coming to you,
sorry.
Annalisa,
Thank
and
you.
I'm gonna give you that and another question. So let me combine the both so that you may
Sure.
drop your gems as
Yeah.
well. So, Annalisa, how do differences in approach between provinces, as Zuko just mentioned, such as Western Cape and Eastern Cape, impact operators, consumers, and overall industry growth? And also touch on the previous question. Annalisa, over to you.
Sure, thank you. Just on the previous question, hindsight gives us 2020 vision. We unleashed a beast. I mean, there was no I don't think anybody planned for online betting to become so big so fast, and it just ran away with everyone. But then everyone needed to, all provinces needed to get on the boat. Some of them are still trying to get on the boat, but that's okay because they have a plan. And but everybody realizes the importance of being in the space. I mean, in terms of the provinces and the revenue that it brings to to the fiscus. But in saying that, regulations are something that are robust. If the act, is basically adjusted, I mean, certain provinces are busy doing a whole lot of amendments to their acts. Once that's finalized, regulations is a robust thing. It can be amended, and it can be, from time to time, it's less difficult to do. And you find that the other sectors, I just wanted to make a point. I mean, in other sectors of gambling, there is much more control in terms of ICPs and how control protocols and audits. And we're going to see ourselves moving into that kind of space in betting because it's a bit loose. Obviously, if you don't know what you are auditing and what you're regulating, it's going to be very difficult to put things in place. But now that that knowledge is there, we will see more structure, and more structure brings more harmonization, and that is what we found. I mean, it was the same thing with limited payout machines. Everybody learned from each other, and now it's pretty much the same process throughout South Africa. But it took 10, 12, 14 years, maybe 20 years to do it. So everything is, takes time. It's the
Yeah.
learning curve. And in
Yeah.
terms of the different provincial provinces and the way they do business, essentially the principles of getting into South Africa and actually trading is the same from a B2B perspective. However,
Mhm.
um, the requirements in different provinces are different in terms of transformation requirements or BEE requirements in certain provinces, which are imposed. Obviously, they feel that the vision is that later on, triple BEE is going to be a big issue with respect to licensing, and they've decided to take that approach. But triple BE in South Africa is a reality. And when you come into this country, you must be prepared to give equity, a part of the equity of the business away. And that is a stumbling block to most operators that are coming in who feel that they don't want to give away equity. But it is a reality of how we do business in South Africa. You must be prepared to do that. Secondly, in terms of the deviations between the different regulators, you'll find that it differs on product. So what they can approve within those provinces, what they will allow, and what your needs are based on the business that you're going to be running. In terms of where you want to position yourself, how large do you want that to be, and the effect of all of the deviations on your business. So you have a choice. You can marry what, look at what the provinces offer. Like, for example, Eastern Cape has a different approval process to Western Cape. They
Mhm.
have different products that they will allow, or alternatively, there may be time discrepancies in terms of the approval process. But in saying that, it's your choice where you want
Yeah.
to go, how your business is, how you're modeling it, and how you want it to be. In my opinion, um, um, I've seen a lot of operators going and getting multiple licenses from multiple jurisdictions and splitting the risk, so that if they want to go with a specific product that is not allowed within a different province, then they would just opt for the next one, and still, Bob's your uncle, you spread your revenue and everybody's happy, kumbaya. But that is just a matter for a business to actually decide. In terms of a national license, you're just paying one set fee. It's not a revenue driven. There's no taxes on that license. It's just one renewal process, one probity, and then you basically can do business anywhere. So irrespective of which province you choose, you can
Mhm.
still work in every province. So yes, that's how there are deviations. But obviously, now we've got other provinces coming on board, offering multiple contingencies and coming to the party. And that will open up a space for anyone locally licensed within that province to go back to their hometown and give, and take product in that space from them. So everybody is just relaxing and
Yeah.
coming to the party right now.
Wow, that was such a very good highlight. National and both provincial. Zuko looks like he wants to add something. Please chime in.
Yeah, look, I see that analysis, and I was trying to drive people away from my province.
Not really. With all respect.
Yeah,
No.
no, I was kidding. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was kidding. Yeah, I think,
Mhm.
but for me, Lynn, like I would have said earlier on, that the history of South Africa, I think it is a
Yeah.
frame of whatever that we are seeing, regardless of the economy or sector that you are in. Now, for example, South Africa, fortunately, even in our constitution, recognizes the concurrent regulation or legislation that there is a national gambling board and then there are provincial licensing authorities, where you have your national gambling board primarily established to set the national norms and standards, and then you have then the provincial licensing authorities that then must then license and regulate. Now, as part of licensing and regulating, if you can check all the provincial acts, you'd find that they're primarily more or less the same. However, the issue, like what Anelsa was saying, would be that how do we then implement that? For example, with us as well as the Eastern Cape, we've gone beyond just only looking at what the act, the regulation, and the rules, but over and above to say if the rules and the regulation as well as the act say that the board must consider and review a product or a system, then the question is how, what are we reviewing and why, and where do we go about? We have created lots of frameworks that have then made us sure that gave us at least a competitive edge. That, for example, we would say within 14 days, we must have responded to you. If we are to reject your product or your system, within 7 days, must have responded to yourself. And I think, as Anelisa was saying, that provinces are coming on board and then we're beginning to get into the space. But obviously, the industry is far ahead. We are getting to these things. But I think, in the main, what would then be the issue is that you have a company from internationally coming that we are used to a particular model where we are coming from. But I think they've got to appreciate the culture and the values of the country that they're coming in and try and make sure that they are customized or they customize themselves or the product. Analyst would have touched on the localization of the content itself, the product that is being offered.
Mhm.
So you must come to South Africa to operate in South Africa and then appreciate the systems and the protocols or the laws that we have. But obviously, we must
You know,
not create an environment that blocks or create bottlenecks. But I
Zuko,
can tell you, yeah,
I'm coming to that actually on
yeah,
bottlenecks, and you
yeah,
part of being the government, and then I'll come to you, Shreya. But
yeah,
this is just a follow up to what you've said, Zuko.
yeah.
How is taxation and licensing fees for online betting structured to support both the government revenue and a healthy competitive industry, especially for people who are now coming into South Africa?
Yeah. Annalisa would have touched on the licensing
Yeah.
fees in relation to the national manufacturer license or to provide your B2Bs and the like. But what we have, for example, other provinces would have licensing done annually. Others, like ourselves, done in 5 years, wherein, for example, you must pay a deposit fee, then you get to be investigated. But annually, you must pay annual fees that are charged for your premises that are attached to your license, whether you operating online or operating like retail and online. And then also, when it comes to taxation, I think at around about 2007, we sought to have a standardized approach in relation to the taxation regime, particularly with the online betting or the betting segment, wherein we have then said that any bet that relates to your horse racing events will then be taxed on 6%. Others, they've a different one, but majority of the provinces tax 6% on punters'
Mhm.
winnings. And
Mhm.
then any other contingencies other than your horse racing, anything else will be taxed on the bookmakers' gross gaming revenue. 6.5, that's the standard rate, but I do believe that other provinces may have a different one. But generally, by and large, the provinces they charge. So we have tried to standardize that. So that is the taxation. Others obviously will then charge that monthly, others will do so weekly. And lastly, in terms of if you are then taxed on your gross gaming revenue, it could be that 1 week or one period you make a profit, one period you make a loss. And then again, because we're very generous, we then say, look, you can carry over your losses, but for certain period until you make that, and then you can then be able to pay taxes as well. I
Wow.
hope I've covered your question.
Yes, you have, and you have said you are generous. Maybe Annalisa can testify. Are they generous? Tell us about the
Absolutely. Great to work with Zuko. He's very generous. I agree with everything he said currently. So I don't want to labor the issues, but South Africa, the way I see it is we're moving. I just want to reiterate this. We've got what it takes. We know where the gaps are, and we're all trying to fix it. And that's the wonderful part of being in this kind of robust in this country right now, in this robust industry, because we know we have to make changes, we have to make them fast in order to mobilize things within the provinces and to make sure that they are successful. And everything is in that mode at this point in time. I don't know, Sheree,
yeah,
if you agree with me, but
yeah.
do you get that feeling?
Yeah, I definitely agree with both my colleagues here. I think we're in a good space moving forward, and there's a lot of things to do, but it's definitely a positive trajectory that we're looking towards.
Yeah, sure. Just to stick on where you are right now, I also wanted to address in what ways is technology, including monitoring systems and payment controls, strengthen compliance and enforce online betting regulations?
Yeah, I think, look, in today's discussion, we've touched pretty heavily on the innovation of technology and the rapid rise of it and how it's affected all different aspects of the industry. When you're looking at it from a compliance perspective, technology has definitely improved and is also adapting to the needs of society as well as our legal frameworks. So we look at modern monitoring applications that allow you, both operators and regulators, to see things in live real time, see how betting is being transacted, to see what anomalies are being occurring, and all of that is just being streamlined to be more efficient and more effective, right? And then we look at technology in terms of KYC applications or even AML policies, and it's all being done in line to streamline everything and to kind of create more uniformity,
Mm,
which is only a good thing because it's harmonizing all aspects and parties in betting, and also letting us pick up things that wouldn't have normally slipped in the cracks without having to use technology to do that. So technology is definitely growing in the industry and in the space, particularly within compliance.
yeah.
We're seeing a lot of live transactions and real-time monitoring, which is assisting, as well as you're looking at different tools that are being created to be in line with AML, FICA, PAPIA. So it's more uniform within all the provinces and the operators. So it's a good positive direction that we're moving in here with this.
Hmm. Wow, that is very insightful. And Alyssa, I see you want to add something to tech.
Yes, yes. That was such a concise answer and so brilliant. But I just wanted to say that that is the one thing in South Africa that would change the game completely if we did have some sort of monitoring in place. The bottlenecks that we experience is because we're also very under resourced at certain, certain regulators are under resourced. Having automated systems in place will actually speed up processes within those provinces and will lead to better synergies. Also, if you're having cross-border transactions happening, for example, if I had multiple licenses, all that can be tracked through a monitoring system. It would make it easy to feed information through. The vision is to try and manage the assets, which is the assets are the games, which games are approved in which provinces and which games are actually activated within those provinces. And a monitoring system will help that part of the audit process become so streamlined that you wouldn't have to do much work. You'd just be printing reports and finding out which ones are flagged, and it would happen real time. In our country, we're given 24 hours to remedy any non-compliance. I mean, if you
Mhm.
have a system like that in play and everything's speaking to each other, it's very easy to remedy your non-compliance before it becomes a catastrophe and you get fined for it. So, in saying that, this is exactly what the country does need. It needs a monitoring system. It needs a system that covers from start to finish what we actually work on in terms of processes with the regulators. And we'll find that our communication will be streamlined as well to from operator to the regulator as well, because everything is online. Um, from renewals all the way up. So I am so pro that. I come from a monitoring system background, having worked with Zonke and LPMs and stuff. So I know the value of it, and it can only take us to the next level.
Yeah. So I also want to encourage our audience. So if you're listening to this conversation, drop your questions right here because our panelists are ready to answer. And also feel free to engage with us. Sheree, I want to come back to the issue of innovation, and I also want to hear everyone's perspective on this. Are there lessons from other countries or African markets that South Africa could adopt to improve regulation without stifling innovation? Are there?
Yeah, I definitely think, and there is, and I think that this is something that will be a continuous practice that we need to adopt. I think other jurisdictions are always trying to innovate and to remedy whatever problems or bottlenecks they're experiencing, and it's imperative for us to take acknowledgement of that and see how we can either implement this or mitigate a potential problem that we may experience in the future. We look at things like site blocking that's been implemented in France and Estonia for unlicensed operators. These are just small things that we can also adopt and to use in order to understand how the market is playing out. We look at other jurisdictions within Africa where mobile money regulations are very heavy. That's something for us also to consider. How does that impact South Africa in a betting space, and in order for us to adopt what regulations and policies are being implemented overseas or within Africa that we can implement here.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
just vice versa of that, what do you think that other countries or other markets can learn from South Africa?
Lots.
A lot.
Look,
Okay. Okay, who do you start with? Shura, did you have something to add on that? And then I come to you, Annalisa, and then Zuko.
I'll let my other colleagues good to go and share their thoughts on this.
All
I'll
right.
take this one first, and then Zuku can fill in the blanks afterwards.
Mhm.
So, what I've
come
noticed,
on.
and I'll just take this from an Africa point of view, right? From an entry to market and clarity in terms of how you enter market, South Africa is very structured. They have a way of doing things when you're coming into the market. You know exactly what license to get, how to get it, accessibility to boards, accessibility to the right people. It's an easy entry. We can learn from that kind of transparency or that kind of interaction. And I say this with much respect for everyone across the continent, but people underestimate what South Africa actually has to offer, and how far we've come in terms of our the way we do business. And
Yeah.
there's lots to learn about how we do it. Like, for example, the simple things like the contentious issues. Do we need a B2B license? Don't we need a B2B license? How can we get about doing it? They've made provisions for all of this, and they've done it so well that it's not difficult to actually come into this market. Um, and certifications are clear. They have their own certificates. It's defined. You know exactly where you're going with things, how you must get it into the market. So once you get the hang of it,
Mhm.
you'll realize it's very structured.
Wow. There you
Yeah,
go. Your insight about South Africa. Zuko, add in
yeah,
your
yeah. Look, Lynn, I hear my colleagues, and yeah, it's true what they're saying, but I think there's an element that they may have left out, and I think
Okay. Drop it.
having been to some parts of Africa as well, you name it, your Botswana, you name it, Kenya, and then Nigeria as well. I've seen, because as a regulator, as we license, part of our regulating is to protect the public. Now, in protecting the public, I would like to share this with public. They know that, for example, in any form of gambling, we make sure that there's what is called theoretical return to player. That is set at particular amount in terms of, or percentage in terms of regulation, number one. Number two, we also have means and mechanisms for responsible gambling, that when an analyst come or Shoei come to us with his or her system, they must make sure that there are mechanisms within the system that are able to enable you as a player or patron in that system, that if you want to take time off, you can take time off. If you want to self-exclude, you can then exclude yourself. But in terms of fighting what Shure was talking about, AML, anti-money laundering, does your system allow or assist you to that? Because remember, as a regulator, we also fight against anti-money laundering. That is regulated by the Financial Intelligence Center. But also for us is that if you want to have proper regulation, we must talk about real data, real-time data, wherein now as transaction occur, we're able to see that data, interpret, transmit it, and if want to store it or want to whatever for decision making, we utilize that data in real time. That is what I think the technology is going to assist us. We have seen in Nigeria, for example, recently, they've done, I can't remember the name of the system, but it
Yeah.
talks, I think it's Safe Play or something like that. Even in Gaborone or in Botswana as well, they've done an e-portal that helps, deals with the responsible gambling. So that's what technology does. I know the operators will talk about increasing revenue. We are happy to increase revenue because increasing taxes, and then it means that you are helping us to contribute to the provincial and national fiscus. But we must then make sure that whatever that we do is people-centric and responsible and ethical. Yeah.
People-centric, ethical. That is the bottom line of things. So I also want to encourage our audience, please keep interacting, keep bringing your questions, and keep sharing. And I want us to do our last question, and I want everyone's remark on this. And I'm gonna start with Anne since she's like me, she's a woman. This is our closing remark and our closing question, and keep your questions coming in. So, Anne, what is the most realistic scenario for online betting regulation in South Africa over the next 5 years, and what factors will most influence this outcome? And I will then go back to you, Shure, and then to you, Zuko, and then to our audience, and then we can call it a day. But Annalisa.
So I see an alignment when it comes to how business is going to be done across all provinces in the next 5 years. I see some congruency, not all, but I see a lot of congruency in terms of the processes, because everyone's going to strive to make the processes similar so it's easy entry into that market.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
can also see that there probably will be, better structure, because as things go by, as days go by, we basically can put in more structure. Regulations means that it leads to rules. Rules means that it leads to processes. So I see a more stricter ICP coming out. Things that are laid out better, no gray areas, plugging in the risks as we go along. And I really feel that in 5 years' time, this market will be very, very defined in terms of products, what we expect. I think we'll open up other sectors as well. We'll be able to create different types of products that are new and improved, and entry into this market will be easy. Yes, from my point of view, that's what I see. I see more compliance, but more structure as a
Mm.
result of that compliance, and lesser
Yes.
risk, and
Yeah.
more player protection.
Thank you. And Alyssa, there was a bill you talked about as well. Can you just expand on that because there's some people on
Oh,
LinkedIn. Yeah.
so just to clarify, we have an online betting act. Basically, the online betting is approved in South Africa, and there's an interactive gaming bill that hasn't been promulgated as yet. So we haven't taken casinos and put them online. That is not allowed. We work in the fixed odd betting space in South Africa, but that is not something that in the future, that in 5 years' time, we don't even know what might happen with that bill, and whether that will be passed. And if that is the case, then casinos can go online, and then there's other sectors that might want to go online as well with their products. But I mean, obviously, that's something we have to get the semantics right of online betting before we can progress into everything else.
Yeah.
Once that's sorted out, the next stages will come.
That is very well profound, well put. And Shura, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I have to agree with my colleague there. I think that's definitely on the horizon for us. When I look at it from a legal perspective, I definitely see us harmonizing and creating a top to bottom structure and framework that includes national and provincial so that everyone is aligned. I think in the next couple of years, we're going to see greater transparency as well. What
Mhm.
that will do is increase consumer protection, reduce enforcement cost, and push us towards a more ethical environment. So I definitely see that, and I definitely do agree. I think the types of products are going to be more defined. I think compliance strictness is going to increase, but that's also going to mitigate further problems in terms of AML aspects. Um, so I think there is a lot of improvements that we're going, but I definitely see a more streamlined, efficient, effective as a process that we're going to be implementing and moving forward as an industry together.
Yeah. Zuko, tell us what you think.
Yeah. Um, I align with what the colleagues are saying. Definitely, I think we were going to see that in terms of harmonization and so on. But I think for me, as the industry continue to grow, because it's going to continue, I can tell you. But one of the things that we have noted is it's an increase in terms of the complaints and disputes that we've flagged as a regulator as well. And then also this, we find that these complaints and disputes sometimes they are linked to whether it's bonusing and so on and so forth. Those features that you would have, but also indeed more compliance, more structured. But when it comes to risk analysis, I don't think with the increase or the booming or the increase in growth, there will be a reduction in risk. And I think we've got to balance that, because what do I mean about this? We have the emergence of various B2Bs or B2Cs that are interconnected. And some of these providers, very few I can tell you, that are ISO 27001 certified. Some of them, they don't subject their systems or platforms into independent review for whether it's cybersecurity, whether it's just general information security. But obviously, as a Eastern Cape, would have introduced audits on the ICT space to audit your systems, not only because we want to check if you comply, but to make sure that you are protected. Because when we protect you and then your business has business resilience and it continues, it means that the province will continue to generate revenue through taxes that then must then go to build houses for people that need houses. So for me, definitely there will be increase in growth, but equally there will be increase in risk, and then we must then up our game and enhance our risk mitigation, risk controls management that we're introducing. Hence, I even say a reimagined gambling regulatory framework that is through the lens of information systems and information security management, as well as your public protection. But also, I think in the main, because already we are in conversation about harmonization and so on, but we are engaging with the National Gambling Board and other PLAs, as well as the Minister of Trade, in South Africa. Already, there's an ongoing conversation about the possibility of legalizing online interactive gambling. Because I can tell you, as things stand, one of the factor that contribute towards the illegal gambling is online interactive that is offered by people outside the country. Now, government continues to lose revenue through that. But if that is legalized and then a framework to protect the public and ensure that there's compliance, then we'll be having a significant reduction in terms of illegal gambling. And then we can focus now in terms of what is needed to be done. So, but I can tell you there's definitely going to be a continued growth in South Africa, but that growth must be equally with responsible gambling, ethical behavior, people-centric. We must not only focus on the profits. Thank you.
Yeah.
On that note, Zooks, sorry, Lynn, if I just missed
Zuko
something.
started. Yeah.
On that note, if you think about the marketing, and you touched on it, and it's something that it's very sensitive. Player protection is marketing and player protection are directly linked. The way you sell your product and the way you position your product is extremely
Yes.
important to the mindset and the psychological impact it will have on the player. And that is something that we should be driving continuously. And
Yes.
one thing that needs to be managed is
Yeah.
how the B2Cs actually sell the product on. And
Definitely.
everything in that respect needs to be looked at. And that's something that, yes, there's a huge gap, but I think in 5 years' time you'll have policies for that, don't you? I hope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I hope so, because as Zuko said, people fast, and you brought
Yeah.
it out very well. How we market to our consumers really determine how it is received. And
Lynn, sorry,
yeah,
how I put it, Lynn, I
yeah,
always say, as an operator,
uh-huh,
don't aim for compliance, right?
mm-hmm. Yeah,
Don't aim for compliance, but compliance and player protection should form your business ethos, so that if for whatever reason you still fall within compliance. But if you do things for compliance purposes, when you fall, you'll be outside, and then you'll be caught, and then you'll be in trouble. Like Shure would have said earlier on, a license that you receive, that is an asset. Now, if you risk that, you can imagine, I don't think your shareholders will be happy. So I am
Yeah.
happy with what Anessa was saying. Indeed, marketing and player protection, you can't divorce those.
They merge. And Sheree, I
Yeah.
just want to bring this because it's a question from LinkedIn, and I think they want to emphasize you to emphasize what they can learn from you. So this is someone from Kenya where I am, and they're saying, how can other markets in Africa, such as Kenya, learn from SA in creating a stable market with less rampant changes to gaming laws?
Well, I think we're definitely a leader in various iGaming aspects. And if you look at the regulators and how we've been enforcing our policies and enforcing regulations upon operators, we're doing a very good job of it, and we're tackling whatever problems are coming away. Yes, a lot of the problems that we're experiencing are innovative issues that are here for the first time, and like we mentioned, with the rise of technology, these things are coming up without us having previously assessed and understood a framework on and a risk mitigation strategy with that. But as we are doing, and as my colleagues have mentioned, risk is so important. And I think if you're looking at other jurisdictions looking at us to see how we are tackling risk and enforcing it, I think that's a really big benefit for them to take on.
Brilliant. Anna, do you want to add something to that?
Yes,
Yeah.
just on the Kenya side,
Yeah.
if you look at South Africa and the way they do, how betting is set up. There's a product part and the technical standards that are attached to the product and the requirements that are based on that. There's a
Yeah.
B2B side. Do we have a requirement for you to enter the country? And what is that requirement? And then there's the B2C side. I find that in other countries, like even Kenya, it's difficult for us. There's a blurred line in terms of those three aspects. It's just the
Yeah.
B2C that's controlling all of this, and everybody is basically moving in under that license, and everything is given to the BTC. But there's no actual communication between the regulator and the B2B, and the regulator and the test houses. And well, maybe they do now, but this is my
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
And there has to be absolute synergy
Yes.
between all the players if you want harmonization. So this is my key takeaway, that if we can structure it so that we know what we're doing with product, we know what we're doing with B2B, we know what we're doing with B2C, we know the requirements are for B2C, and that is easily available. And like in South Africa, I'll give you an example. They give proper approval letters on everything. So you won't activate a client without a proper approval. So you get it, the B2C gets the letter, and then that letter is passed on to the B2B, and the B2B then activates the games. So those type of processes make reduce risk on the B2B that's coming into the country. It's clear that we can enter the market. It's clear that it's okay with that board. And these are the gray areas that we struggle with in certain countries, where we can't
Yeah.
get these
Yeah.
approval letters easily, and we can't have that paperwork. But we need that paper trail. So if anything can be learned from my perspective, from a B2B perspective, it would be that, to be able to have that information and to have those structures in place.
All
Clear.
right, all right, all right.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Yeah.
that. And I'm seeing a question from YouTube before we even close off. We've talked about regulation, we've talked about putting those laws into place, but someone is just curious. While a regulation sets the rules, what solutions ensure those rules can be enforced consistently, whether it's automating, compliance reporting, and it's Emal, and he also says managing consent or giving players easy access to self-execution tools. So who wants to go on that?
Okay.
Zico.
I think I'll start, Lynn. Um, like Annalisa has painted the picture nicely of our regulatory framework. From the Act, regulations, the regulators now to the testing laboratories that must be SANAS accredited. That those are the competent testing laboratories that are qualified, that can test, your equipment and everything. And then you have your SABS that then develop the technical standards and so on, where as regulators and operators or experts of the industry, we serve in those committees. Now, coming back then to the question as to, while there are regulations that set the rules, how do we then ensure that the rules are followed and then that they are compliant? From the rules, when we issue the license, we then issue with the conditions of license. Those conditions of license will then demonstrate or stipulate exactly how you are going to comply with the rules. Over and above that, part of my team or my division of the three subdivision, the other subdivision annually conduct what is called scheduled compliance audits, wherein they visit your premises and ensure that you have everything that the rules set or the regulation have set. The second part or the second subdivision would be that the inspectorate, they can come as and when they inspect, the inspectors, they inspect you. There's law enforcement, there's inspections, there's fines and penalties if you are found to be on the wrong side. But obviously, the remedial action, fines and penalties is the heavy one. But we first warn you to say, get yourself back on the track. If you don't, then you face the music. And then you will then have on the other side now not only visiting your establishment that is licensed, but you have the gaming control regulatory affairs and systems that audit your systems, that checks whatever that you advertise out there if it was approved by the board. If then it was not approved, then you are in trouble again. Lastly, we would have what we term as a gambling industry compliance maturity index framework, wherein we score you annually. We review on a quarterly basis. If you are below 70%, you are in the red zone, and then you become a problem. That license, you risk losing your license, and you cannot then again apply for another license. You'll be blacklisted in the province. And I think it's something that all provinces are getting into now. So there's a lot of work that we do, and also there's a requirement in terms of regulation that you must have internal audit function that audits your operations in every 3 months. So there's a lot of work that has been done, like Annalisa was saying. Thank you.
If I can just add to that, Lynn, I think what's important is we're all driving towards the same means. And one of the questions is about automating compliance reporting and self exclusions and stuff like that. Everyone's striving to do that, but in this context in South Africa currently, it is not driven by the regulator. It is driven by the actual operator. So, if an operator is concerned about player protection and all of those things and wants to implement technological tools like self exclusions via SMSing, etc., then that operator will make the contact and set up that. But in terms of the way the businesses are set up, they have there's basically a principle. You will protect the player. How you go about protecting the player is your business. It's not enforced. But if we find that you're not enforcing it, then we will take away your license. So that's how it basically works. And the onus is upon you to find mechanisms that suit your business and your pocket to do so. So every operator has got this opportunity to go and do all of these, put these bells and whistles into their, plug it into their platform and have all of this in play. And that's great. But that onus is not on the regulator itself. It falls upon the operator. And that's why I said in 5 years' time, you'll see this changing, where you'll see something coming up saying you will have this in place. You will have that in place, because right now it's very loose. It just gives you a principle and you've got to follow through with that principle.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
not blue, not
And I
blues.
love where we're going, and I see Zuko, and the conversation could go on and on. We definitely agree with that. Emal, I think you've gotten your answer. I think both of them have answered quite well. And this conversation can go on if you follow these panelists. Make sure you interact with them. And Emala is saying instead of just examining regulation in theory, practical solutions can help regulators and operators actually implement compliance, self execution, and responsible gaming. And this is what Zuka and Annalisa were just talking about, and you can follow them, kindly follow them on their LinkedIn. Talk with them. Talk with Zuko if you have something with regulation. Talk with the Shirar. Talk with Annalisa. And I want to give thanks to iGaming Africa for making this webinar happen. This was such an incredible webinar. We learned so much, and I also want to thank iGaming Africa Consult for even making this happen, and also a special thanksgiving to our sponsors. And as you know, we were to be we were four panelists here, but Robin has sent his apologies. Kindly accept his apologies, and yeah, thank you so much for making this a success. Over to you, iGaming Africa. And remember, this coming May 2026, we have iGaming Africa Summit here in Nairobi. So, South Africans, come here to Nairobi. Come here, come here.
We are
And
coming.
We are coming. So maybe just a closing remark from all of you. What do you want to say? Are you getting the tickets? Zuko, just a closing remark, quick. Annalisa and Shire, tell us something.
Yeah, look, from my side, it would be to thank iGaming Africa and iGaming Consult, as well as you,
Yes.
our moderator. But I think just also maybe to assist Emile and everyone else, like we were saying, that in the next 5 years, the tech, are going to help us with real time, whether it's player protection or
Mm,
revenue monitoring and so on. But I can tell you, we are what I term PRO, public, regulator, and operators. So the PRO trio, we need one another. Let's work together. Africa is huge.
yeah.
I know the international will talk about Africa being over 23 billion. How much billion in US dollars? And then that must then be for Africa. And the content should be African. Thank you so
Mhm.
much for having me.
Let's work together. That is Zuko. Annalisa, quick. What is your
So I
takeaway?
just want to thank everyone for having me and giving me the chance to say what I have to say. I'm very passionate about mobilizing Africa and South Africa, and I am so grateful that we are moving in the right direction. It may not seem like that for some, but
Mm,
from me being in this industry for 2 decades, I know that this is serious progression, and it can only get better.
yeah.
And the opportunities are endless. And if you just look at job creation on its own and how much we have contributed to that employment in the country, it's just phenomenal. And we're going to continue to strive to hold up those pillars, which is to bring in revenue to
Mhm.
government, to increase employment, to reduce risk, player protection. All of those pillars will be upheld, but the important thing is to have the vision of growing the country, the economy, the continent, and the people. Most importantly, our people, who are the most important thing to us.
Definitely. I stand with you. Africa is where the opportunity is. And yeah, people first. Shreya, what's your
Just
closing
want to say
statement?
thank you to everyone who was a participant and made this panel discussion a success today. I really appreciate it. I think it was very insightful, and we've been definitely able to have some positive discussions on the way moving forward. I think it'd be awesome to come back in a few years to see how we've been able to make all these trials into different
Mm.
tribulations and actually make a success of everything we've discussed here today.
Yeah, definitely. We're gonna come back. And in case you haven't followed iGaming Africa, this is your time for you to follow them, and you can follow them on Telegram. That is iGaming Africa. That is where you will know when we're going to come back and when we're going to have other webinars like this. iGaming Africa community and Africa Consult. Thank you so much. Over to you.